With the Blood Ravens returning in Dawn of War 4, there's never been a better time for a refresher on the series and what's important about planet Kronus. Kronus, sitting in the Litesh sector of the Ultima Segmentum, has seen many wars over the years, stretching all the way back to the Horus Heresy. As loyalist and traitor forces clashed on this battlefield, it became the source of many relics and forgotten technology, such as chapter relics and ancient titans. At the time of Dawn of War 1, the planet and the sector itself is largely under the control of the emerging Tau Empire, who drove the human colonists away and have been battling the local Xenos ever since, albeit unsuccessfully. The most notable of their enemies were the local feral orcs in the sector, who were so bloodthirsty and fierce that the Empire called for the aid of none other than General Farsight to eradicate them. But even such a legendary commander failed to get rid of the Green Tide on Kronus. As the events of Dark Crusade begin, the conflict mainly starts with the Eldari Farseer Taldir, who was sent to the planet to deal with the until now unknown but newly awakening Necron threat on Cronus, as it seems the planet has been colonized and populated without knowing its true origin of being a Necron tomb world. Unfortunately, this campaign of the Eldari did not go as smoothly as they wished, and they crossed paths with both the orcs of the sector giving them trouble and the Cadian 412th of the Imperium, who they briefly allied with, then left behind betrayed. This is the story of the previous expansion Winter Assault. So Farseer Taldir is now in Cronus, continuing their hunt for the Necron, but the Imperium also dispatched Lucas Alexander, who they named Governor Militant of Cronus, and created the first Cronus Regiment, with the orders to bring stability to the planet and hunt down and bring the treacherous Eldari to justice. As it quickly turns out, they were not the only one to arrive to Cronus, and by this time multiple factions have emerged to fight for the planet. The Tau were still struggling for their control of the sector, the Orcs became stronger and stronger under their new bosses Gorgut's Headhunter's leadership, who has also been chasing and hunting the Eldari Farseer and the Imperial Guards after their battle in the previous planets. And unexpectedly, an undivided legion of the Wordbearers also decided to appear, attempting to turn the planet into a new demon world led by their dark apostle Eliphas the Inheritor. With the conflict now escalating, new intel is also found that lost relics have been recovered from the Horus Heresy, with information about the possible origin of the Blood Ravens chapter. With such high value and secret data located, the chapter master of the Blood Ravens, Azariah Kairos, dispatched 3 companies of Blood Ravens, led by a young Captain Davian Thule, to locate and secure this relic, and purge the planet of all Xenos activity to protect it, beginning the conflict remembered as the Dark Crusade. This is where the gameplay of Dark Crusade begins, and the player can choose which faction to play as, with their own story and cutscenes. But later it was also confirmed that the Blood Ravens campaign is the official version, so that's what I'll focus on, but there's information from the rest that are relevant to our story. As the Blood Ravens began their campaign to purge the planet, unfortunately they immediately got into conflict with Governor Lucas Alexander of the Imperial Guard, who refused to abandon the planet due to his orders from the Astra Militarum, and also the Adeptus Mechanicus, who were now hellbent on retrieving a Halcanon relic from an Imperator-class Titan, Aquila Ignis, found from the Horus Heresy. Bound by duty, the 2 Imperial factions were now locked into a war neither of them wanted, leaving a stain in history. Fun fact for this segment is that there are official records within the Adeptus Mechanicus of a well-renowned explorator, Magos Palladius, who was stationed here on Cronus in search of artifacts and discovered the wreck of Aquila Ignis. What is not revealed is that the tech priests found the Imperator Titan has in fact been also corrupted by the forces of chaos, an entity known as the Great Unclean One. This raises questions to me whether the local priests were engaged in heresy or not, and was the conflict between the Imperial Guards and the Blood Ravens a tragic confluence of honor and duty, or were the invisible fingers of chaos already manipulating the events here? Either way, the Blood Ravens laid siege on the 1st Cronus Regiment in Victory Bay, who despite even using the Titan's Hellfire cannon against their attackers, could not hold against the Space Marine companies, and were slaughtered by the Blood Ravens, leaving a dark mark on their chapter that later invited even the wrath of the Inquisition. Interesting bit about the Imperial Guards is if you defeat the Blood Ravens, it's revealed that Governor Alexander finds the hidden relics of the chapter, and the information within was so horrifying that it shook him to the core. While the Imperial Guard campaign is not canon, this still lines up pretty well of what we know so far, and puts even more pressure on the history of the Blood Ravens. With the Guardsmen now out of the way, the Blood Ravens turn their attention towards the Eldari and Farseer Taldir in the west, who mainly use tricks and deceit trying to defend themselves, using the Orcs against the Space Marines, and even a rogue force of Chaos Space Marines in desperation. Ultimately, as their warp gates are destroyed, and they are trapped on Cronus, the Eldari are defeated, and Davian Thule executes and brings justice to Farseer Taldir. This crushing campaign to purge the planet continued for the Blood Ravens, and their next target were the heretic forces of Apostle Eliphas, who sought to appease the ruinous powers and transform Cronus, an oddly quite active planet for chaos. The most notable reference from their campaign is if you defeat the Necrons, Eliphas gains the favor of Tzeentch for his success, and this interest in the local Necrons might become relevant a bit later in Dawn of War 4. Eliphas is defeated by Captain Davian Thule in the end, and the local warp gate is closed before more forces of chaos could invade Cronus. For his failure, Eliphas the Inheritor is executed by a Demon Prince, which was weirdly retconned later as far as I know because he returns in Dawn of War 2 as one of the main villains. Finally, as the Blood Ravens turn to finish the conflict and banish the Necrons, Davian Thule has no choice but to attempt to seal the Necron tombs on the planet using explosive charges. In the commencing Great Battle, the Space Marine companies are even forced to battle a K-10 shard of the Nightbringer, and Captain Thule loses an eye in the process. But in the end, victory is achieved and the Necrons are buried, hopefully for eternity. The defeat of the Necrons would mark the end of the Dark Crusade officially, and the Orcs and the Tau were apparently defeated in the same timeline without any notable impact on the grand story. But it is worth noting that the Greenskins of Kronus were all united under Warboss Gorguts, who is the recurring arch-enemy of the Blood Ravens, and even if you defeat the Orcs in the campaign yourself, it ends with Gorguts managing to slip away, rebuilding his Va, and giving more trouble to the Blood Ravens in the future.
Always have your tunnels dug and ready. You sure is smart, boss. Shut it, you git! I got me a whole war to rebuild. Now get me the gawk off of this here planet.
The conquest of Cronus will be the last of the great achievements of the Blood Ravens for a long while, and it also came at a great cost, having to slaughter the first Cronus regiment, and provoking the anger of the Inquisition. While it is not in Dark Crusade, later in the series it is revealed that Captain Davian Thule did indeed find the hidden relics of the Blood Ravens on Cronus, but they were so horrendous that he decided to destroy them and swore to never reveal its contents. Davian Thule is also present in Dawn of War 2, where upon receiving critical wounds against the Tyranids, he returned as a dreadnought. And as far as I could find, that is pretty much the bulk of the story of the planet Cronus that's relevant to us. As still a newbie to the 40k universe, I was digging even further in Thirst of Dark Knowledge, and there's a couple more things worth mentioning before we end the topic. The developers mentioned that Dawn of War 4 will kind of have its own story, so I think our best chance is that it's really just going to be a brand new story with some of the recurring characters like Cyrus or Gorguts, but considering the new 500 world story and the current trends in Warhammer, I tried to connect some dots that might be relevant, or maybe it's just a coincidence. We know the Adeptus Mechanicus will be present on Cronus, and if you remember, I mentioned the Magos Palladius at the beginning, a renowned explorator of the Edmac, who uncovered relics from the Dark Age of technology, most importantly an Aeolis orbital control post, an ancient tech that could track all orbital activity and plot courses to evade even the most complex siege formations, very valuable to the Imperium. Naturally, the remains of the Titan Aquila Ignis and this orbital control from the Dark Ages alone would grant enough reason for tech priests to keep interest in Cronus. And with recent story revelations, it is also not unlikely that the Adeptus Mechanicus would show interest in the Tomb World due to its connections to the K-10. This topic is also very trending at the moment with the recent rework of the K-10 shards, and also the story behind the Necrons attempting to find all the shards of the Nightbringer. While Dawn of War 1 is very old in comparison and the lore has been changed many times since, the fact still remains that story-wise the Bloodravens encountered a Nightbringer shard while fighting the Necrons here. In the short story Inheritor from 2016, Kronus was also named one of the 500 worlds of Ultramar. A recent rumor also states Necrosaur Amentar assaults the worlds of Ultramar in search of K10 shards, which would line up perfectly with the scattered bits of lore from Dawn of War 1 and what is being introduced fresh in 2016. Lastly, probably my most far-fetched theory, considering the writer for Dawn of War 4 is John French, who is famous for his Thousand Sons and Armand novels, it would also not surprise me to actually see them eventually pop up in the story. There's a very popular fan theory of the Bloodravens originating from the Thousand Sons, so I wonder if they will be the Chaos Legion eventually appearing in the expansion or a final enemy for the campaign. Either way, there must be a great reason for the Primarch Lionel Johnson to appear in Cronus, and whether it's about finally ending Gorguts' long Wa, the Necron threat, or a potential Thousand Sons involvement, I guess we'll just have to find out. But in the end, I'm really new to 40k and this is just based on me playing Dark Crusade for the story and doing most of the archive reading from in-game maps, so who knows if any of this will be relevant or not, but I had great fun looking into it at least. I hope you too enjoyed this video. I'm looking forward to reading your comments, so do make sure to share what you think, and if you're interested in more, consider a thumbs up and subscribe for more 40k content. See you guys in the next one.